So let's get started. Okay, so this is a photo I took a couple of days ago walking out of the store. Unfortunately, I didn't take a raw photo. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to check the settings, but this is what we have to work with. Okay, so first things first, I'm just going to make a duplicate here. I can drag and drop it on this plus sign, or I can just hit Command J on a Mac. I'm going to go into Color Raw, and right away we can see we have our scopes on top. We have our histogram, and we have our matching parameters here going from blacks, shadows, etc., etc., etc. So like we talked about in class, we really want to pay attention to this. If we go over or under, you're going to see these triangles on the corners of the histograms start to alert us that we're crushing values, right? We're losing information. So never trust your eyes necessarily, and definitely never trust your LCD screens. Always verify with your monitors. Okay, so like we discussed, we always start with values, and we start with the blacks and the whites, just like tuning a guitar, right? We start with the top string or the bottom string and work our way to the middle. When we're doing that, we want to sort of exaggerate going back and forth until we find our sweet spots. It's something that we like. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot to work with because this isn't a raw photo, so we're going to be crushing values pretty easily. Okay, so once we have something that we like, I always like to toggle back and forth with the before and after. Before, after. Remember, our eyes can get tired real quick when staring at computer screens all day, so it's nice to refresh and get some perspective. Okay, so another thing we talked about in class too is moderation, right? A lot of people with color correction, when they're first getting into it, really tend to go ham on it, and things start to look unnatural real quick, which is not necessarily what we want. Okay, so that's basically what I got to work with my whites and my blacks. So I'm gonna move in to my highlights and shadows. I like my shadows a lot. I don't really want to diminish them at all. I really like this very subtle rim light here. You can tell right away we're blowing out the color though, right? We make a lot of adjustments here. So we don't have a lot to work with, unfortunately, with this file. That's okay. Okay, so before, after, before, after. Okay, once you have that, we get into color. So the nice thing about our Photoshop Raw is that we have our steps in order, right? Our post-production steps. We all start with values, then get to color with hue and saturation. So you can see saturation here. We have our hue parameters here. If we want to white balance it, we can let it do an auto, and you can see how it's shifted the parameters. We can also use our color picker and find something white that might give us a true white. So you can see, it looks like before there's almost like a little bit of green or aqua in that sky. Typically with this auto function, I like to split the difference. So I'm going to bring back some of that green, maybe bring back some of that blue, make it a little bit more natural. Right? Less is more usually with color correction. Always remember that. Okie doke. So that is light and color. Typically, what I do if I'm in a rush is I'll do everything auto and then start to really move the parameters around. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, I'm not going to get into texture or vignetting. That would be for a later class. Curves are interesting because you can really target your values and your colors with this target here, right? So let's say I want to bring, what's something we can change here? Maybe I want to bring up the value here. So I can see exactly where that is on my chart here, and I can really get specific in how I manipulate that. Or let's say I want to bring down this guy even more. I can make another parameter there and try to isolate him from the rest of the scale here. So curves can be handy. You can also manipulate color channels specifically, which gets a little bit more sophisticated. Something I recommend for a future class. Okay. So I think that's good enough for here. Let's open it up. So we have our original, we have our new color corrected version. So one nice thing about making a double two, I'm going to make one more, is you can again split the difference with opacity. So I like this I like this modified version, but after looking at the original, I kind of like some of the detail in these darker areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to opacity mode and just pull down the opacity a little bit, maybe to 90, maybe right about there. Again, it's like tuning a guitar, right? So I'm just going to slide that back and forth until I get something I like. Okay, looks good. Good. You can see the photo itself is already really saturated too, shooting around noon on this really bright sunny day. Okay, so that's it. So now I'm going to merge these two together. That's Command E, layer, merge layers, or just Apple E. Okay, so that's something I like. I'm going to, again, duplicate this. And then in your adjustments, fly down menu, you have your whole spectrum of color tools, color modification tools, and value modification tools outside of Camera Raw. I like to often use this one here, which is Auto Tone, and this one here, which is Auto Color. I'm using Command Shift B and Command Shift L, or you can just go to Image Adjustments, Image, Auto Tone, Auto Contrast, Auto Color. So now we're making that pink stand out just a little bit more, but again, we're losing some of that blue. So I have a little bit more separation. I'm going to again kind of cheat this. With more advanced color correction tools, we can do this without all these layers, but I thought just for today, something quick and easy to get you started. Remember, if we want to turn this into a black and white image, it's Command Shift Option B. And we can also go through the different filters for varying black and white ratios here. Look at the difference between blue and red, pretty dramatic. Okay, for your black and white image, again, that would be under adjustments. So basically everything that you need is under image adjustments. Okay, so let's say we wanted to change a specific color. So there's a few ways we can go about doing this. In Camera Raw, we can go to Color Mixer, use our target, we can amplify, desaturate. But what can happen sometimes is that these colors will bleed. In this case, we have a high degree of separation, so it's not really applicable so much. So this might be a quick fix for changing color. If we wanted to use it in the main menu, we could go to Quick Select Tool. Okay, so once we have our dancing ants, select the mask, and we can adjust the degree of transition between our mask, right? So maybe a bit of feather, depending on what you want, or a higher contrast for a sharper edge. You can pull the edge in or push it out. So now we have our mask, and we can change our color. So back to adjustments, color balance, hue saturation, channel mixer. All these will get you varying color parameters. So because it's a black image, there's not a lot we can do with it, right? There we go. Okay, so now we have a man on fire in the middle of the street. Kind of weird. Getting some interesting fringing around the edges. Okay, so let's say we want to do something a little bit more realistic. So I'm going to choose, see if I can choose the sky again. It didn't work last time for object selection. Let's see if it works this time. So quick selection tool, let's give it a shot. So if I want to make it bigger, I use the right bracket key, and I'm just going to drag and sort of pick these little nooks and crannies, if it works. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to shift the edge a little bit. Hopefully it'll get rid of that fringing we saw earlier. I'm gonna make it smoother. Let's see what we have. Okay, so not too bad. Go back to my adjustments, and I'm gonna try a few different color options. Okay, so this one's working a little bit more realistically, but you can see with the reflection here, it's not gonna match. So we're not gonna get a very realistic situation here, but we can emphasize the sky a little bit more if we wanted to, ever so subtly. Black and white. Kind of unexpectedly, we got some more detail in the clouds, which is nice. So this might be something if you have a high dynamic range as far as differences between light and black. Sorry, white and black in your shot. And you want to keep the detail of both, right? So one thing I forgot to show you is in Camera Raw, just make sure that you know you have various options for changing color and your saturation, midtones, highlights, blacks, etc. So you can see here, you have a global universal change, or we can be a little bit more targeted, right? It looks, pretty nuanced, but like I said earlier with color, that's really what we want if we want to keep our naturalism, right? Our sense of naturalism is working with the nuances. So now you know, give it a shot. Also with saturation and vibrance, we talked about this in class, but just in case you forget, so saturation is kind of a more global shift in the amounts of grays or the saturation of hues, right? Versus vibrant is more targeted to the less vibrant colors, right? It's going to pop them out instead of having this sort of global effect. So you can see here at 38 with vibrance. Let's see if it makes a difference. Yeah, we have a little bit more targeted adjustments here. So that's basically it for just a quick rundown on color correction in Photoshop. I'm going to show you one more thing in Photoshop Beta. So what you're going to do is just go to Adjust Colors. And it's going to break down this color palette for you, the color palette that's in the photo like we had covered in our lecture. And just like we had in Camera Raw, you can just use your color picker. We're going to pick the reds, change the hue. The nice thing about this too, if you want to go crazy, it will cover these reflective areas as well. Okay, so there you have it. Just messing around with change to color in beta. As you can see, you can get pretty psychedelic out there, but both Photoshop and Photoshop Beta will basically do the same thing. Beta will just give you a few more options for targeting without necessarily masking like you will in Photoshop. So I hope that helps. Have fun and can't wait to see what you got.